So this is one of the basic nodes I've just released. Be mindful, obviously, even though I've released it, there might be some minor changes to some of the text that you see. But if you download it, it shouldn't, if you start setting things up, one of the key features that I liked about, David's sketches and the way LCC works, what I tend to do, the first thing I ever do when I start playing with a node, having uploaded it, I always make a backup of a blank node and then start playing with the configurations. And then if I mess up, I can quickly go to the restore and bring that file back, and I'm back to a blank node. I don't have to re-upload to the ESP32 or anything. Now, as I say, this is what I did the other day. So this is the 16 outputs, and basically I've got 40 actions available. Now the actions basically allow me 40 different things. I can push this a lot more actions, but I thought at the moment, just for the basic, keep it small. So the key feature with OpenLCB or LCC, we use the event IDs. We teach them to other devices and they consume it. So this is actually a consumer node. So if I take an event from a producer node, drop it into here, you click save, then whenever that event is seen on a bus, it will trigger whatever I've told it to do in this position here. So this node I actually released it in the journey a long time ago, but I think I only had, I can't remember how many I had actions or how many inputs I had. So when you upload this sketch from my GitHub repository, it'll come with 8 pre-configured actions. And the first one, obviously, you can choose your pins. So these are the pins, and they might seem like they're in a strange order. This is how they appear on the shield that I use. So that's why they're there. So the sketch comes with pin 4 set as off. You've got parameters here you can alter. Now this, to be fair, the latest one I've got up there, which is waiting on a pull request, we've made this so it's not as cluttered, but I haven't had time to do the pull yet. So the next action, or action 2, you can name these actions to whatever you want them to be, as long as when you change it, click on write. So again, it's pin 4, but it's a high, so it's going to be an on. Third action we call flash, and obviously again it's on pin 4. It's called flash. Obviously you can choose different ones from this drop down. I'll leave it as that. Then you'll notice here in the parameter 1 and 2 we've got a value of 10, and that basically will blink the LED. The next action, again on pin 4, we've called strobe effect or strobe. So it will pulse the LED on for 20 milliseconds, so 2, and then it'll go off for 100 milliseconds. So, we can change the variables. We have a random, so obviously these are all on pin 4. So, some pins you might only want 2 actions. Some you might want the 8, So when I teach the event from another node, the LED can either be on, off, flashing. This was a nice feature, which in the early sketches, we could only teach the pin to do one action. It'd be either on or off or whatever. You couldn't then say, you could set it as a flash, but it would always be a flash. So with this iterations, we've now brought in the actions. And this came about, or I sort of mentioned it to David at one point because I'd seen it within the CBus modules I thought that's a nice feature. The only one that might be a little bit strange on it. So again, it's on pin 4, and the parameters have been set at 135 and 160. And with these are figures that we're suggesting. But what this does, when you teach the event from the producer and drop it into here, it starts the program will start LED on pin 4 flashing, but it'll also produce pin 5 to do it. So you have two LEDs to make it look more realistic. Then the final one is an event to turn them off. So, these are pre-configured, and what I put in my documentation is I'd recommend people make a note. I put them in as preset for people to have a play. If you make a note of them, if you change them, so you can be able to use it. Unfortunately, at the moment, if you choose this, it uses the algorithm for the fire, but obviously it won't preset these two variables here. So I'll end that one in case and see if there's any questions on that. I know it's a lot to take in. There will be videos coming out and there will be more documentation going into the GitHub wiki as I have time, probably while I'm away more. Okay, so I'll move on to the next node. Now this is one of the problems that's sharing on Zoom. I'll have to stop the screen share. Sometimes when we work with Zoom, it upsets some of the programs we're working with, which is a bit annoying. Okay, hopefully now you can see the CDI for the new node. Now this is a collaboration that David Ellis from the Merseyside Area Group, he had a request for a layout that they're building. So this has been, we made this available, I showed it originally over 5 months ago. So we used to have two native servos, we've removed those. So currently we've got 8 IOs that you can choose what you're going to do with them. I put some more details in here. Now we're still debating whether what we'll put this as. So again, on this one, these are the options you've got available to you. Again, we've got the parameters. So really, the documentation will cover some of the basics of what you can do with these. So, at the moment, I've just put here pin state high. I've got 3.3 volts here, mainly to protect me, because if somebody starts using an input with a 5-volt logic sensor and destroys their pin, you've been warned here that the ESP32 is 3.3 volt compatible only. If you want to use a 5-volt sensor, you're going to have to use level shifting. So these are the choices. So it's very similar to some of the early basic nodes I've released. Then we've got 2 MCPs available, one on COM port, IO/IC address 20 or 21. But what you'll notice here, it's actually saying MCP is okay. So it discovers the MCP if you've got it connected. Now on my plank at the moment in front of me, which I can't show because I'll have to set a camera up and to try and do that and Zoom live and everything, you can see here it's telling me it's missing. So if an MCP goes down, you're going to get a warning here, it's missing. We put the notice here because obviously with the MCP 23017 microchip, I put a data release out on the data sheet saying pin 7, even though many of us have used it in the past as an input, there's a risk it will stop the I2C bus. So, we've got those notes here. Obviously, these are the events. You either teach to another node or you teach an event from another node into here. So with LCC, we use copy and paste. rather than people who've been used to the FCU drag and drop. So there is a slight difference with that. The next feature we've got, and obviously I've put a little note here because for those who don't know, many of the PCA 9685s you can buy in the clone format, even though they say on the back of them they have reverse polarity protection as advertised, they don't. Not all of them do. So here you can see it's missing, and same here. So on this one, I haven't got it on the node that's actually got the PCA on it. So again, you would know your MCP or your PCA 9685 is not there. If it's not there, it's ignored by the algorithm. Now, the advantage with the PCA, and this will appear on the Beyond the Basics when it'll just be a simple node. Each servo, we can change the speed. We then, when you get it first, it will come with position 1 and position 2 set at 90, so you can set up your servo. You then can change it by using the sliders. I would suggest if you're going to do this, be very careful. Obviously, if you've got it on an N-gauge turnout, it doesn't take much to move before you start bending the blades. So my advice would be start off by typing in something, a minus. So if you said 87 degrees and write it, that helps you see whether you're going in the right direction. Now, you'll notice here I put suggestion closed, and on the 2, I put suggestion thrown. Now, that does throw some people because they're used to the terminology of normal and the through, I think it is. Now, within JMRI, if you're going to use JMRI to create your panels and be able to use it with JMRI, knowing that, this is what they look for is closed and thrown, I felt that was handy to put in here. The next feature we've got here, so when the consumed event, is when you trigger one of these here, because when you set it up, you can actually trigger an event using this feature, and that will put the event onto the bus. So what will happen as it reaches the midpoint, if it's moving towards position 2, you'll see this event here. If it's going the opposite way, you'll see this event here. So this is what we use to teach a relay, to do your frog switching. So that's another neat feature. The next thing we're possibly thinking about, we have mentioned it. I've had it working on a node up on the layout up in the loft, but that was on not with the PCA 9685. We can have 2 extra events, and those events will be the servo has reached its position 1 target, and the servo 2 has reached its position 2 target. So that will become handy for, giving you feedback that you've reached them positions, maybe for use with your LED if you're on a mimic panel. Obviously, if you want to actually know your blades move to those positions, you're probably looking at needing microswitches. We've made enough IOs available for that to be done as well. It depends on what you're actually wanting to use the node for. We have, this is quite a powerful node. The next section here is the PCA options. Now this affects all the 16 channels of a PCA 9685. Excuse me a second while I just have a drink of water. So currently we've got 2 positions available, 90 and midpoint between the endpoints. So you might think, isn't that the same? Now, depending on whether you're adding this to a layout where you've already built it, 90 might not be your midpoint. So we're a bit nervous on that, because obviously normally people would be building a layout and they've already, we know if we're going to go down this route, you would set your servo horn with the servo at 90, you then attach it to your turnout, and then you start working. But you've also got the midpoint between. So if your servo or your turnout wasn't 90, wasn't in the middle, once you've set it, you choose this option and it will start up on the midpoint. I am looking at adding a third option in there, which will be closed or a known position, because it depends on how you're going to use this. David Ellis, who sort of suggested what we want or what he wanted, he's using 2 push buttons, but on his start of the day, he wants them to go to the midpoint and they won't move until he presses a button, and he's using 2 buttons to control each turnout. We've got plenty of IOs, he can do that. The next feature which has been added, because obviously David Ellis asked for, can we stagger the event going out? So this has been added recently, and I don't know whether David has tested it yet. So it defaults when you get it at 25. So this should send out the events slowly, moving the servos. And then the final section is servo shutdown or leave the servo active. Now, depending on the individual users, some people might want to leave the servo connected. Some people like to detach them. So we've made that option available. This is only available for all of them. I don't feel it warrants adding it to every individual servo. It just adds to the complexity of the code. And I think that's all. Yeah. At the moment, you have got reset controls. Now, these, we haven't got them working on the DIY nodes. Obviously, the commercial stuff, yes, that has that feature enabled. Whether we actually look at doing that in the future, I don't know. Then the other box down here is for those who are using JMRI, sometimes you want to create the sensors or the turnouts, even though you have an option further up, sometimes you want it to do the opposite way. So this is why I mentioned thrown and closed. Obviously, we have active and inactive because this is what sometimes appears in the JMRI sensor table. So when it starts up, JMRI obviously queries all the nodes, and if the turnout is in the thrown position or the closed positions, it will report it as active or inactive, which can also be translated to thrown and closed. And then obviously you give it the name of your turnout. You then click on make it a sensor, or you can make it a sensor or make it a turnout. So I think I've spoken enough. Obviously, I'm happy to answer any questions, or if I can't answer it, hopefully David can answer it for you. Just trying to see if there's anything in the chat. No, I appreciate it's a lot to try and take in a, what we've been going now 46 minutes. Obviously, I prefer to do short videos to show, look, start here. Unfortunately, the video series, because it was a journey and because my YouTube channel covers 3D printing, CAD design, obviously programming PICs, programming different protocols, it's messy. So I'm probably looking at making new videos, possibly under. The reason I've done it on my personal YouTube channel is over 1,000 subscribers. My MERG channel at the moment, I think, has got 39 subscribers when I last looked. So I really want to be able to get this out to as many people in the public. as I can reach. I don't like using Facebook to promote what I do because I'm not a fan of Facebook. I do advertise on MRH. I just recently put a post on that, and I've had some interesting and interesting things come through on that. Good question, Jeff. What is a channel? So a channel really is a pin, or it could be when we come to the route selector, which I've released, you don't actually have to use a pin.
I think he's asking for the link to your YouTube
Oh,
channel, Jeff.
sorry. Okay. Okay, I'll put that in the chat shortly. It's a bit of a corny name. It's Model Railway, the easy way. So it is a bit of a strange one. Well spotted, David. Obviously, sometimes when I'm thinking, what's a channel? Because to be fair, we do sometimes call some of our things channels, actions, pins. So yeah, there's a lot to take in.
Is it worth me just saying a few words about our layout and why we were thinking of doing things the way that we're thinking of doing them?
Yes, please, David.
Okay,
Definitely.
right. Well, for those who aren't aware, Law Log, Liverpool and West Lancs O-Gauge Group, we have several layouts and three in construction at the moment, I think. One of which is to be an exhibition layout in the form of a wagon works. And although it's not a particularly large layout, we thought it would be an interesting one to use as a sort of test bed for a layout control bus. And I had to put it to the committee, and if I had said, well, we could use C-Bus, but we'd have to buy the kits, and they'd have to be soldered together, and I can tell you now there is absolutely no chance whatsoever that they would have said yes. And even as things stand, it was a bit not sure, because once I said, look, we can use these ESP32s, we can use these peripheral cards, we can make it modular, we can make it easy so that people don't have to know anything about electronics or computing. Remember that most of our members are currently running DC from the 1950s. That's what we're dealing with, and trying to get them comfortable with the idea of electronics is quite a task, as you can imagine. So even though I've managed to persuade them, yes, we'll have a go at this with our new layout. It's a double layer layout. There's a lower level and an upper level, and our chairman said, right, well, we don't want to be stuck at an exhibition, as he has seen a number of layouts over the last few years with various pairs of feet sticking out from under the baseboard and people furiously programming on laptops behind the scenes while nothing happens at the front. He said the only way we're going to do this is if we run it as two totally separate layouts, and you can put your layout control bus on both of them. So it's a bit ironic that we're using a layout control bus to simplify things, but we're having to put two of them on. But that's the way it is. It's the first venture into anything of this nature, and so they are very nervous and very reserved about it. So we have to demonstrate that it's going to work and that it's going to be reliable over the years. And I think if we can do that over the next few years, then they will start to relax more into it, in the same way that many members have now gone into DCC. If I'd said 10 or 15 years ago, oh, DCC, they'd have gone, no chance. But gradually people are sort of getting used to the idea and starting to accept it, because it is reasonably reliable and they feel more comfortable with it. So one of the things we've got to do, again, because they said, right, well, what happens if this goes out on exhibition and it falls over? What do we do? And I said, well, you've got these ESP32s, you can just plug them in, you can just squirt the data down. They went, no, not good enough. That'll take ages. So basically, not only are we using two layout control buses, but I've been told that we have to have a duplicate for each of the boxes. Now that's not too bad, because that'll only be 10 boxes in use and 10 boxes carrying spare in a carrying crate. But when you look at the cost of these units, they're only £10 to £12 per unit, which makes it viable. So hopefully people will be able to become comfortable with the idea, they'll see that it works, and things will be okay. Now, in order for us to be able to do that, we are having to try to make them as modular as we possibly can. And so that's why I said to David and to John, I think what we need are basically two types of module. There's the module for the baseboard, and there's the module for the control panel. The module for the baseboard, because we're controlling the two layouts separately on the two different levels, we'll actually only need one of the digital I/O peripherals, the MCP23017, and one of the servo peripherals, the PCA 9685. And I can show you where we're up to with that. This was about a month ago. One of the Merseyside area group members in MERG is busy designing and printing a 3D box for us. And you can see here the top has the MCP23017 and the bottom has the PCA 9685. Here is the ESP32 sitting on its own shield, and the idea is that there can be another MCP and another PCA on this side. That will be added to, and in fact the member just texted me today to say that he's now back home, so he'll be working on it soon. There'll be an SN65HVD230 CAN transceiver about here, and there's a plug and socket going on there, and there'll be eventually a multiplexer, which I think you're working on at the moment, are you, David? Is that right? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So as it stands at the moment, if we were to put both MCPs and both PCAs on here, as they come from AliExpress or wherever, they all have the same address. And because the people that have been making these in China either are going for the cheapest possible cost or not really understanding what they're doing, instead of putting pull up or pull down resistors on that are about 10k, and then you bridge across a solder pad to change the state, to change the I2C address of these, which would be the sensible way of doing it, they have put in 0 ohm resistors, which means you have to unsolder it and then you can bridge the other side, which is not ideal. And bearing in mind that what we're trying to do is to produce something that is as simple, quick and easy and cheap as possible for people to be able to produce, who are general railway modelers, not like us into poking about with electronics and computing, we felt that rather than having to change the address of the cards by unsoldering resistors and soldering pads on, it would be better if they could just take them straight out of the packet as they arrive and plug them onto a multiplexer, so that instead of having two peripheral cards with the same address on one bus, you have two peripheral cards with the same addresses on two different buses, and that overcomes the problem. So that's where we're up to, sort of roughly speaking, with the modular design. That'll have a lid that slides on over the top, and at the moment he's trying to work out how we'll fix it to the layout and make it robust and give a bit of resilience with some rubber pads and all this sort of thing. So that's really what we're actually trying to do, to make this as modular and as simple as we can. Oh, and one of the things that of course you'll have realized from that is that those peripheral cards that are on the side means that you just have a multi-way DuPont connector which just plugs straight into the side of the box and then connects to your layout wiring infrastructure. And the consequence of that, of course, is that if you do need to change a module because something goes down, you just unplug everything, slide the box out, slide the new one in, plug it back in, and you're up and running again. So it's quick, it's simple, it's easy. Now for that reason, of course, it means that we won't be using the native pins on the ESP32. We'll only be using the peripheral card pins. But again, that improves the idea of modularity and ease of connection and ease of use. So that's a bit of background behind, basically where I'm sort of coming from with it.
I think the thing to point out as well, David, is the chairman of Lawlog is a MERG member and has
Yeah.
been a MERG member for a long time.
Mhm.
So obviously he's looked at systems coming and going. I think the vice chairman, is it, or the treasurer, or whichever it is, I can't remember. He's actually already had mega points. So on one of the layouts in Lawlog, they'd gone down the mega point route.
Now, I think that's on his own layout, actually.
Yeah, but they're
It's,
actually stored at Lawlog. Because
right.
I'd seen my act, I've asked the question, why aren't you using it? And at the time, I think he said, no, we've moved away from that. So, these are the things I understand where they're coming from. They've been around uh, Ian's, who is the chairman, has been around the exhibitions scene for a long time, going to many different shows, involved in lots of clubs. Obviously, in the Merseyside area group, we did start talking about DCCEX. He actually has bought for his other club, the CSB1, is it? And they've been experimenting with that, having seen what we were doing with it. So,
Ian is a MERG member, but he
yeah,
would be the first to say that he's not into electronics and computing. He's very much at the sort of the nursery slopes. But he's reasonably amenable to the idea.
yeah, yeah. He's also made a layout which is an upside down layout for the kids. That's powered by an Arduino as well. That's a neat layout. Uh, I did want to put a video to it at one point on the knowledge base, but not on the knowledge base in a forum post to show people, look, this is the type of things the Merseyside area group look at. We're not. This is only one project